Welcome to Straightway Through with Gina, the podcast where we say it true, say it straight, say it kind to the best of our ability every time so that you can communicate better. Think about your relationships. Where do you get stuck with communication? Where does communication feel hopeless? Where would you like to see it improve? Well, we have a special topic for you today, and we are going to introduce it shortly. But first, I would like to introduce my guest, Andrew Paleologos. And I would like you, Andrew, to please tell us who you are.
Thank you so much, Gina. Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Paleologos, like Gina mentioned. This is my very first podcast ever, so I'm very excited to do this today. And forgive me if I stumble along the way. I'll try my very best. I've known Gina for several years now. I think Gina going close to 6 years in the Toastmaster community. She's a terrific person and Toastmaster. So when Gina asks for volunteers, it's a great answer is yes. Just let me know what I can do for you, Gina, and I'm happy to help her. She's a wonderful resource, very patient person, and I totally enjoy being with her. So that's a little bit about me and our relationship with Gina. So I'll bring it back to you, Gina.
Okay. Well, Andrew, that was so nice. Thank you for that. And that was more about me than it was about you. So here's what I want to know about you. Here's what our listener wants to know about you. Why is communication an important topic for you?
So important, Gina. And it's a pretty broad term, communication. We're communicating now, but there's so many other methods. You can go with email, you can go with text, you can go virtual meetings. There's so many virtual meetings these days. And that in-person contact tends to get lost. Not totally lost, but I think communication, especially before the pandemic, a little easier. You get together with a business meeting, for example, you're pretty much together in the same spot. Now, in my world, I work for an accounting firm. We have Teams meetings all the time. Probably a couple of times since the pandemic that I've had in-person meetings. Everything else is virtual. Our teams, our people are spread out, not only just domestically but internationally. So communication and the focus of listening, which we'll talk about a little later, has become, I think, even more challenging. So some lessons that I've learned along the way, I'd be happy to share. And I think communications become more, again, a little more challenging. Totally not impossible, but hopefully along the way we'll learn a few things during
Hmm.
this podcast.
That's right. And thank you. You introduced the topic. Our topic today, I asked you, what would you like our topic to be, like I do for every guest? And right away, you knew it. You said listening. I think this is such an amazing topic you chose because a lot of times when we think about communication, we think about the talking side of communication or the side where we're not silent. And when you say listening, it's like, oh yeah, that's the counterpart to talking. That's one of the most important parts of communication. So I love that we're going to chat a bit about listening, and I'm wondering what had you know right away that that was the aspect of communication that you wanted to devote some time to today.
Yeah, Gene, I could probably hijack the rest of the meeting with several examples, but I definitely don't want to do it to our audience. But at the most basic level, no matter how you slice it, you pick up the phone, I'm sending information, but I'm also receiving information. Communications, and I mentioned them things like text, emails, etc. You're sending and receiving. We focus on the sending, and we should. We have a message to deliver. It's important how our receiver received it. Okay, that's important too. But then when we receive information, how do we process that information? What do we do with that information? Did we understand this information? Some examples. When you're ready, Gina, I'd like to highlight a few
Yeah, please
examples.
do.
Okay, so I'm going to share some personal stories. Again, so I could probably go on for a while. And Gina, if you got to pull the plug on me, that's perfectly fine. But the first example that really came to mind is a few years ago, I got that letter, and I got the letter about jury duty. and I got selected for jury duty in Bergen County in Hackensack. And they already, on the jury pool, they already had 3 days where they were trying to select jurors. So they picked my name, and as fate would have it, I was the foreman for the jury. And there was like 28 counts in the indictments, and had to listen to the lawyers, to the prosecutor, to the defense attorneys, to the judge. Very important to be, you may have heard the term active listening. So you're on the edge of your seat, and you're watching people. So the good news about being on jury duty in this situation, I could see the people, I could see their body language, I could see their expressions, and that sort of thing is very important. Again, we lose that in virtual meetings, and I'll talk about that a little later on. Then the deliberations. And I was responsible, 28 indictments, and with 11 other people I've never met in my life before. And how do we communicate and listen? So 2 people really stood out, and I remember them like it was yesterday. Beautiful lady, very soft-spoken, intelligent lady. So we would go around and say, well, what do you think about this charge? Whatever you think is fine. That's okay with me, but we want to hear you, and try to pull her information. So she was hesitant to communicate. On the flip side, you just need to know yes or no. Do you agree with the indictment or you don't? And with all of that taken into account, the listening part was so important. We had to listen to everybody, collaborate, and then finally give our verdict to the judge. So as foreman, I had to stand up in the court, and the judge was reading these indictments. And on the first count, how does the jury, guilty, not guilty, so on and so forth. We had to go through 28 of them. So midway through, the judge, she misspoke. So I had to listen. I'm like, so I just raised I was standing, I said, Judge, I'm sorry, and you try to be polite to the judge. You don't want to get on the bad side of the judge. And the judge, I said, please, I think you missed something here. Can you read that back? She says, oh, thank you so much. You're right. And she appreciated it. So the jury duty story, Gina, that really, really highlighted the need for not just, we talk about communication, but the listening part of it, I thought was really hit home and helped them. And people were thanking me at the end.
Hmm.
They appreciated the work. And then, it's a collaboration. It was teamwork to try to get people to work together. So very satisfying experience.
Hmm. Well, yeah, not that many people would say the same thing about jury duty. It's good you had a good, satisfying experience. Now, where do you think the listening came? Was it more a lesson in your listening or in other people listening, or like where did the big listening piece come in?
Well, it's both ways, I think. So
Mhm.
number one, am I communicating to the team and trying to get the team to work together? And I
Mhm.
believe the answer is yes. Now, I forgot the gentleman's name, had a wingman, so to speak. And he was on my right side. He wrote down names, and he was helping me out to keep things track and moving. So that was important to know people's names, because you met them for the first time, and then where they stood. And then on the other side, when people, he just would really go on, and he was doing his best. So he was being very sincere, and he thought he really had to go through line by line, word for word, everything in the indictment. This indictment was easily, inch and a half thick.
Mhm.
Everybody in the jury had this paperwork. So I think it's important to let people talk so they can hear themselves. If
Mhm.
they go over, I'll use the term overtime. What's overtime? Well, there's a bunch of people crowded in a room trying, but you try to be patient as much as possible and let them speak. And then once they finish, then it's your turn or somebody else's turn. I think one of the things that I try to control is if somebody was speaking, whether it was me or anybody else was speaking, and then somebody else jumps in, kind of cuts them off and interrupts them, let them finish their thought. And I think I tried to develop some respect. I guess I'll use that word, but let's respect their opinion. We don't agree with it. Maybe they're off track. That's okay too. That's why we're in a jury pool, to express our thoughts and let people come to complete sentence and complete thought before we go to the next step.
Mhm.
So I
It's not.
hope I
Mhm.
helped you answer the question.
Yeah, it sounds like you were in the role of management You know what I mean? Like you were managing, and it's not sort of like a referee or someone who keeps the flow of things. And I guess that's what my ear is trying to hear. Where that's is it? Do you have to listen really well to be in that role? Do you have to ask other people to listen to you to be in that role? Like that's why I'm looking for where that big, because I do believe it's here. I just don't believe we've said it yet.
You're
Where's
probably, yeah, yeah. You're probably right, Gina. But it's really comes down to, if I had a statement,
Mhm,
um, and then I would say, does that make sense?
mhm,
And that's one of the things that I try to do, not just there, but everywhere. If I'm doing a presentation at work, for example, presenting a new idea, a new process, whatever,
mhm,
and then you present it, say, hey, does that sound right to you? And then pause and say, wait, any questions, comments, and then try to move on. So, um, and then if they have a question, even if they're off base, or if it's a great question, and if you don't have the answer, that's fine too. You follow up and you just say, we'll look into it and then get back to you. So I think people ultimately like to know they're
mhm,
being listened to. So once they know that you care about what they're, and I think maybe that's the thing you might be looking for here, and I'm trying to tell you this, is that you really care about what they have to say.
mhm,
And even if you don't agree with it, that's okay too. But hey, I heard what you said in a
mhm,
nutshell. I think I think it's this. You're saying it's that. And and then try to get other people to weigh in and sort of speak, to get people to think a little bit. So you're trying to get people to think, come to a conclusion, on a verdict. So I hope that's a
mhm.
little closer
Yeah, I
to
mean,
the.
what I hear from your story, and it doesn't mean that it's your intent, but it's just my ears and what I hear as I'm listening, is that you do your best to go out of your way to get other people to listen, whether it's to you or to someone else. Would you say
Mm.
that's true or false?
In this particular example that I highlighted, I think that's a fair statement.
Mhm.
I've got maybe a couple of other examples if you want to, and we can circle
Well, no,
back.
I I like this example. I mean, we're
You
not
like
done
this?
with
All right,
we're
keep going.
yeah,
All right, let's
we're
go.
not done with this example
All
yet.
right. Yeah, I'm
All right.
trying to be
So, yeah,
okay.
because it's just my nature to really try to figure out what you're saying. I mean, that's how I listen, right? It's like you know what you're saying, but I have to figure out if what I think you're saying is the same as what you're saying. So that's why I ask a lot of questions like this to help me say, "Hey, am I listening? Am I hearing what it is you're conveying?" Specifically about this being an example for listening. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just interesting because what I hear is you making the case. It's almost like what I interpret you saying is I really value listening and people listening, and I hear you giving examples for how you like to facilitate that more than how, let's say, you are listening. And I'm not saying you don't listen, but I'm saying this example to me shows more about how you're facilitating good listening in a group of people. What do you think? No?
I agree. Yeah, it was a
Okay.
group setting,
Yeah.
and it's not like we're one on one here.
Mhm.
So you're questioning me, and I might have a question for you, and that's. But this was sort of a group thing here, and I thought the listening piece was important because, just really just to get to a conclusion, and
Mhm.
more importantly, get to the right conclusion, because
Yeah.
some of the indictments were very sketchy. Some were clear cut. We
Mhm.
came to a conclusion, no doubt this is the right path, and that's easy. We
Mhm.
take a vote, we raise our hands, and we get consensus, move on to the next indictment. Some of the indictments were really, and the other thing is, it was a very emotional, case, because there were some
Mhm.
pretty serious charges. So you, we have to be sort of, I think my role maybe as a facilitator, as you say, excuse me. So it would be to get people calm, to get people in the
Mhm.
right frame of mind so they can express themselves and listen to others. So
Mm.
that was one of my challenges here, because
Mhm.
to be a good listener, not that I'm a perfect listener, of course, just have to ask my wife, and she'll let you know that I listen to everything she says. But it's really just to be in that sort of moment where you're ready to listen. Just like anything else,
Mhm.
you have to prepare a presentation, but you also have to prepare for listening. Uh, so so that was important too, because if, let's say, for example, somebody expresses an opinion about a verdict and it gets dismissed, or I say, no, that can't be, forget about that.
Mhm.
Or, and then people might either come back or maybe get confrontational, say, wait a second, you're not listening to me. You're
Mhm.
not taking my opinion. You're not valuing what I'm saying to you. So I think I mentioned that earlier. Is to value what people say when you are listening. Maybe that's one of the main messages here.
Mhm.
Value their opinion, value what they say, appreciate what they say, but it's okay not to agree with it. It's perfectly fine, because I have my point of view, everybody else has their point of view,
Mhm.
and then how do we come to a consensus in this particular case for the jury duty?
Yeah. So in that case, what you're describing is it's not just listening, it's how do we prep people and help, whether it's ourselves or others, be in a state where we can listen. So
Yes,
it's almost like
yes.
getting it's almost going way further than just listening. We're not even just talking about listening. We're talking about like how do you prep and prime someone to be in a state where they can listen? That's a golden question right there.
Yeah, and in that particular setup, it's
Mhm.
probably a little easier because I could see the people, I could talk to the people, we have coffee together, we see each other at lunch. So you develop those relationships.
Mhm.
Relationships, are key. So we were deliberating for 3 days. So we get to know one another, and we talk, we have some small talk, and that was one of the things I encourage people to do when we first met one another. Just again, it's a side topic, but I think important. Who are you?
Mhm.
You're introducing me to your audience, right? Here's Andrew. Hi, how's everybody doing? Well, same sort of thing happened at the jury duty. I asked everybody to do a quote unquote elevator speech, introduce
Mhm.
themselves, and just give them, and just give just a brief point of view on you feel how the case is. So I asked everybody to do that, to encourage people to talk, number one, so they communicate, okay, but
Mhm.
also number two, that we will all listen to their points of view and say, oh yeah, well, you live in so and so, I live over here, and oh wait, have you been to this restaurant? So you develop those relationships. Then I think, Gina, then we're ready to get down to business
Mm.
and come to a again, conclusions on the jury duty. And
Mhm.
real quick side, uh, but I think it's sort of in the same thing. And the theme of this listening is, many years ago, I used to do computer repair. And one of the
Mhm.
lessons I've learned with computer repair, so imagine, you get into an office situation in data center, wherever, and the equipment's not working. And you're
Mhm.
the tech that walks in and has to fix everything. And there's departments doing nothing. Managers aren't happy. The equipment's not working. So you got to do, and one of the lessons you learn is you fix the customer first before you fix the problem.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
you fix the customer. Hey, we're here. Thanks. And you talk to them, see where they're at, see where their emotions are, and just, can you tell me what's going on? Because they're stressed. A lot of times they're stressed out,
Mhm.
especially if there's a there's a backlog of work, is what I'm trying to say. So fix the customer service, so they're in the right state of mind. Then, okay, what's the problem we're experiencing? What error codes? What's going on with this equipment? And then get to it, and it makes it helps to make things a little easier, and
Mhm.
a little, a little smoother on the communication, and then you develop that relationship. So in that case, if you come back to the site, say, oh, he's back again. Oh, Andrew, how are you? Yeah, good to have you back. Say, we got this problem over here, but when you get to it, um, so it helps to develop. a good relationship.
Okay, a couple of things. So, one is that it sounds, if we're going to tie this into listening, which why not? What you just shared about going to the place where they have broken computers and taking care of the customer first before the computers, you're listening to them and their complaints and their frustrations. And just that listening alone helps them feel validated. And then you address the computer at the computer level. I think that would go so far if all customer service representatives were trained in that way. Because a lot of times, by the time you get around to calling a customer service representative, it means you've been at this and you can't fix it on your own and you're already frustrated. And so what happens is you call them and then they just try to deal with the problem and they're not dealing with you and your frustration. And so it doesn't feel like you're really being heard. They just keep talking at the level of the problem. And if they had just said, wow, I hear that you're frustrated. It must be very frustrating. I totally get it. Is there anything else you want to say about that frustration before we tackle this problem together? Right? It's like that's such a great way to give somebody the space to listen to them so that they feel like they're being heard. And then those defenses can come down and then you could problem solve together. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's really a great way. That's a great training that you had. For whoever trained you to do that was great. I also want to go back to something you said earlier. You said, let's see, what was it? Uh, hmm. It was about, the jury duty. Okay.
Hmm.
I want to say because this is something that keeps coming up in my mind when you're talking about it, the real value there of listening, the real value of taking the time and getting to know people and then helping prime and prep them to listen and all of that is because someone's life is at stake. I mean, someone is in the court of law and something's going to be determined for or against them. And I would hate to think of people having a jury that don't listen or that aren't listening. I mean, what a terrible disservice a group of people could do to someone by not listening and really paying careful attention to what's going on and then listen to other jurors. And this is someone's life at stake. So that listening is such a beautiful gift to give to the person who's actually on trial.
Yeah, and to
Mhm.
and take it real quick step further, it's empathy. You put yourself, if I'm in court and my life, is in the balance, or there's these indictments, you want to come to the best possible conclusion, and you would hope that the jury duty and the judge and the lawyers, everybody's doing their best,
Mhm.
and not not what's the word I'm trying to say, but shortchange the system, or just game the system, or just yeah, guilty or not guilty without hearing the facts. Like, wait a second, didn't you hear the facts? Didn't you hear the
Mhm.
info? How can you?
Mhm.
How many times do we hear that on the news or any place like that? They found so and so not guilty. I mean, don't they know the fact? Or we don't know the facts. The reality is we don't. But at the same time, it when you hear it, that's the perception. It's like, wait, how did they come to that conclusion? How can didn't they know? And
Mhm.
so that was, we were trying to be very diligent, and I think um again, I think that came through this time.
Mhm. Mhm. Is there anyone in your life who you have a hard time listening to? And I'm not asking you to name names here, okay? Please don't. But I mean, is there anyone in your life where you just find it particularly hard to listen to them and that you have to work harder at it than let's say you would somewhere else?
The first person that comes to mind, she's really terrific, and we talk mostly on the phone or text. And at times when we have some sort of either disagreement, or maybe can you see me, or something like that, and it's very difficult. Phoning and texting is good if that's the only option, but that's one person, that really comes to mind when you ask that question, Gina. And it's not like and there'll be periods where we might not communicate for a while, or go through a season, then all of a sudden we're talking again, or going through, and it just, that's just a life. Again, it's she likes to stay in touch. I like to stay in touch too, but we can't see each other like we should. And it kind of, like I mentioned at the top, when you have that one-on-one, then you could see them, you hug them, you feel better. But we haven't seen each other for several months now. So
Hmm.
um, it kind of makes it a little tough to have that relationship at times.
Mhm, mhm. Is it just a physical distance that makes it hard to listen, or is it the texting that makes? Is it not like
And
your form
the
of
call, yeah,
communication?
yeah. When she gets on the call, and again, I love her dearly, no doubt. But it's sometimes it's a one-way communication. Okay,
Mhm,
and it's where she says something and I don't like it or I don't agree with it, and then I try to say something and I don't think she really hears me,
mhm,
and I try to be calm, and
mhm,
I realize again she's dealing with several issues in her life too, so I try to take that into account. It's very
mhm,
emotional about it. It's not easy for her. I totally get it. But on the other side, it's like, well, I'm talking to you right now. We're communicating, you and I, point to point, one person to one person.
mhm.
I'm taking the time to listen to you, but at times I feel, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that you're maybe not listening to me as closely as I think you should be.
Hmm. You mean me, Gina?
Absolutely not, Gina, my sister. Okay.
I thought maybe you were turning this into me and you, and hey,
I think
all right, I just wanted to make sure, like, if you were addressing that with me, that you don't feel that I'm listening to you, or you were saying that as if you were
you
talking.
said at the top, you're very patient, and that's one of your
Okay.
gifts, no doubt.
Thank you, thank you. It's certainly a gift that that God has taught me a lot about over the years, and boy, is it a hard. It's a hard one. It is a hard one, but I stay active with it. Here's another question: Is there anyone, and and again, you don't have to name the person. Don't you don't have to. I don't even just mean their name. I mean you don't even have to say who it is. You could talk about them just without referencing who they are. Is there anyone in your life where it's easy to listen to? Like the easiest person.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. Awesome guy. I love him. And we try to make it a point to talk every Sunday at 7:30,
Mhm.
and we share stories, we laugh, we talk about music, we talk about life, we talk about all our challenges and issues. And he hears me, I hear him. We communicate, we talk, we get it, and maybe we're just from the same cut from the same fabric, as they say, and we share a lot of the same interest and same sort of sense of humor and same sort of, and we shared a lot of life experiences together. Just a special person for me,
Mhm.
and it's really not um, it's really not a struggle whatsoever to talk to him.
Hmm. Okay, Andrew, is there anything about listening that you find particularly challenging? Like just day to day that you're working on? Because I know for me, for example, I'm always a work in progress and there's things I'm working on all the time. Listening, of course, is one of them. There's many others. But what's your current challenge with listening? Like where are you growing or looking for growth in that area? Where does that come up?
It's really with new relationships in the business world. And I'll give you an example. This morning, I was on the phone with somebody. We've expressed some emails over the last few years, but we rarely talk to one another. And one of the things that I try to look at, I mean, I have this long last name, and some people try to pronounce my name. Other people say, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm trying to say your name. How do you pronounce that name?" And I appreciate that. So
Mhm.
this person in particular, I noticed when they email me, they say a name, sort of like a nickname, but in their signature or email signature, they have their full name.
Mm.
So it always sort of confuses me a little bit
Mhm.
at times. And I think getting names in particular, when you have this culture that we're in, where there's people, everywhere, and you try to and try to get somebody's name right is so, especially when you're talking to them for the first time in
Mm.
particular, is to get that name. So even if you can't say it or you think you're saying it, say, excuse me, I thought I thought I pronounced your name like this. Am I doing it right? Or do you have a preferred name? So I asked this gentleman this morning, I said, by the way, I noticed you go by this name, but I see your signature is this name. Do you have a preference? Can I, because we're talking like, well, it's Gina, it's Andrew. We know, but I wasn't quite sure how to address him. And he said, no, no, thank you for asking. And then you can call me this. I prefer this. So imagine, like, and I think we've all been in these situations where you call somebody by name and then you call them a name, and then you find out later, months later, say, oh, they go by this name. Oh, you mean their name, but they prefer, and they don't correct you, or maybe they feel embarrassed, or
Mm,
maybe they dismiss and say, wow, this guy Andrew, he doesn't even get my name right. How do I
mm-hmm,
deal with them? So I find that to be important,
mm-hmm,
to try to get people name right, because you're listening to them. All
mm-hmm,
right. And so then they say, oh, he appreciates, he wants to know me, he wants to know how to address me. And I think that's a good springboard to develop
mm.
a relationship.
Yeah, that's great to start by listening to people's names. And it's so easy to forget when you first meet someone. You hear their name and you're already on to the next thing. And 2 minutes later, you forgot completely what their name was. And I think I notice you do that in the beginning of Toastmasters meeting. If we have a guest, you ask them if you're pronouncing their name right. And sometimes there's so many different names in this world and there's so many different ways to say them that it's hard sometimes. Even when you hear people say what their name is, it's hard to remember it. I find it most helpful when people give you a way to say it. They say, like the color red and a straw hat, red straw. You know what? I'm just making up a name there. But when they do that, and then you have that physical placeholder, those, oh, okay, the red, the straw. I find that so helpful. But I think that is one of the hardest things in the beginning of a relationship is getting their name, remembering it, and saying it.
Yep,
And it's
absolutely.
fun to say people's names. I think names are meaningful. And even if you're just addressing somebody that you know for a long time, even if you're sitting down with your wife to dinner, it's nice to say her name. And right, it's like there's a certain something that happens inside of us when someone calls our name, and we don't always hear it from people that we're around every day.
Mhm.
I know
Yep.
a lot for even when I'm commenting on social media posts. I very often put their name in, instead of just saying like, oh, thank you for sharing what you shared. I'll say, thank you for sharing what you shared, John. Right. Because it really does. There's something there that creates a connection when you say somebody's name. Now, one other thing I wanted to show. Do you have something you want to say about that? Because I,
Yeah,
I wanted to
real.
share it. Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
it
Hmm.
reminds me of a story. I had a smart speaker that was a gift from my workplace. Excuse me, and I was having trouble setting it up. So I go onto the website, and get a chat going, and then I get a name of the person that I'm chatting with.
Hmm.
So this name was like a big, long name, and I just copied the name. I said, "Oh, hi, so and so.
Hmm.
Thank you, so and so." And try to use their name in the chat to make it more conversational. So that's a challenge in
Hmm.
this virtual world. And we talked
Hmm.
about trying, you call customer service, and if you use their name in a chat or on a phone call, oh, thank you so much, fill in the name, thank you for letting me, I didn't know that, oh. And then I think that really helps, to get
Definitely.
the information you want to get.
Definitely. I've used that a bit. Imagine if you were a customer service representative and I was feeling very frustrated and I didn't feel like you were listening to me. And I said, Andrew, what can we do to solve this problem? It like stops them in their tracks. They're like, oh wait, this is like a friend. This is someone that has known me for a while, just by saying their name. So there is something to that, saying their name. I just wanted to briefly comment on something you said. You are getting to be known as the person who gets everybody to do their elevator pitch. You said you did that at the jury duty. I know you've done it in our Toastmasters meeting a couple of times. I think it's so good. I think it is such a good practice. If we had more time in every meeting, it would be good to have people do that every single meeting because think about how many times people struggle with that. They go, whether if it's business and they're at a business meeting, or it could be anywhere. It could be at the grocery store and someone says, "What do you do?" or "Who are you?" or they ask you something. So many people stumble through that. And if we got better and we had to do it every day and try in different ways, and we would be proficient at it. So I think it's really great that you ask people to do their elevator pitch as much as you do. I encourage you to ask more.
Thank you. Yeah, and it really came to light several years ago, and I was going to the office, and I typically don't have my coffee when I leave the house, and then our cafeteria's got they just got like all the Starbucks in there, and all that stuff. So I'm ready, I'm just had my commute and I want to get settled in for my work day. And the only thing I could think about was getting this cup, getting this cup of coffee. I got it's going to be my fuel to my day. And then you go to the machine and, somebody asked me, "Hey, Andrew, what's the status on that project?" And I didn't have time to prepare an answer. It's somebody don't want to say, I'm getting my coffee. Like, talk to me later. You have to sort of think on your feet a little bit. But I already kind of knew what I was going to say because I was
Mm-hmm.
familiar with what I was talking. So I was able to just, like we talk about in our meetings, you calmly answer the question. Oh, this project, and then maybe you ask a question like you're talking about, this particular. Oh, yes, and gives you time to formulate an answer and a coherent answer to this thing. But I wasn't ready to answer that at that time. So that's why the elevator speech I think is important. What do you do? How do you do? Where are you from? Whatever the case may be, but and even if you can't answer the question, what's the status of the project? Hey, listen, it's good to see you. I'm just getting settled in. Can I just get back to you in 10 minutes, or can I get back to
Mm-hmm.
my desk and get to the file? Or if you can answer something, here's a quick status of just something, but it's conversational, and you don't want to be dismissive and say, come on now, I'm just getting in here, I can't, I'm not ready to answer this question. And but even if you're
Mm-hmm.
not ready, I suppose there's a nice way to say, like, I need some time to get back to you. Can I just please
Yeah.
get back to you in a few minutes? So something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And these elevator speeches, these practice, when we practice these sort of things, it helps us outside of our meetings. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do you think you were as good of a listener before Toastmasters as you were after?
what's interesting about that, I thought I was a good listener, but I found out I really wasn't that great a listener.
Mm.
And it really the evaluations when we go through that particular phase of the meeting is so important
Mm-hmm.
because we want to listen and have words of encouragement. We want to have words to help the person grow and think, hey, there's something you could try this next time. And there's a way to phrase these sort of things. And it's takes practice, but I think it's important to be sincere, um, to be as, not just, you don't want to candy coat things, but you don't want to be harsh about it either. So there is that sort of balance where you want to, this is wonderful, and you don't want to just give a whitewash, as they say. That was a great speech. I can't wait to hear you again. That's not going to help the person grow. But on the other side, I know when I speak, there's probably, even today, there's probably 15 things I could be doing better, but maybe just focus on one or two key things that the person really needs to work on. Then once they fix those, then the next time there's other things to work on. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing's for sure about communication. It's a great subject. It's there's always something to learn. There's always something to do. Something, you realize, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation, whether it's a live presentation, whether it's a virtual
Mm-hmm.
presentation, whatever the case, there's something's always changing. This is my first podcast, so this is just yet another
That's so
form of
nice. Well,
communication.
thanks for coming on. This who knows how many more podcasts are in your future, but thanks for making this one the first.
Okay, it was my pleasure.
Yeah, and I have one more question that
Sure, sure.
I think will be fun to, and it's interesting because we call anybody who's listening to this podcast our listeners, right? There are listeners. So we're talking about listening
100%.
today, and
Yeah.
there are listeners. I just want to let our listeners know if they don't know, because believe it or not, Andrew, not everyone in the world knows about Toastmasters. I know it's hard for us to believe, but because it seems like it's everywhere, but there's so many people that don't know about Toastmasters. And so for our listeners, Toastmasters is an international organization for public speaking and leadership. And Andrew and I are both in the same Toastmasters Club chapter. And that's why we're talking about our meetings. And in the meetings, it requires a lot of listening. Yes, we're there to public speak, but we're also there to listen to other people speak. All right. So my last question for you, Andrew, is if you were not you and you were listening to you, okay, and you heard what you said about the person that you have the hardest time listening to, what advice would you give them on
I
how?
say,
Yeah. Mhm.
okay, yeah, I'd say number one, keep trying. The worst
Mm,
thing is to not communicate. I mean,
mm,
yeah, there's going to be seasons. There's going to be times like, if I have this conversation, it could get confrontational.
mm,
And so to get into that right, we talked about it being in that right state of mind. But on the other side, even if it's a simple text message,
mhm,
email, something very low level, hi, hope you're okay, thinking about you.
mhm,
That difficult person, I would suggest, trying that. And if possible, um, and, sometimes there's distance, sometimes there's situation where you can't be together, but try to make it a point. And I'm speaking to myself more than anything else, but it's trying to make it a point to be in person
mm,
with that person.
mhm.
Because you know, the, all of these technologies we have are great, and they definitely help. I'm amazed, for example, like what we're doing right now. I can't even comprehend that. To be honest with you, it's really fantastic. But there's something special about being face to face with somebody,
Right.
and I think that is important.
Yeah, it is important. Thank you. That was great advice for yourself and for all of us. And maybe one day we'll be in person with the Straightway Through with Gina podcast. Wouldn't that be fun?
I was kind of
Uh,
hoping today was going to be like, if you asked me, said, "Oh, meet me at such and such a place, and we'll have a." Yeah, I think that would be maybe something to consider down the road. That I would be
yeah.
happy to be part of that.
That would be so fun to have an in-person podcast studio where people come and we're in person. Wow, that would be great. So maybe one day, maybe one day. But thank you for sharing on this important topic. I think listening is something that we can all grow in. And it's not just listening to others, it's listening to ourselves. I find that one of the best predictors of how well we can listen to another person is how well we listen to ourselves. In fact, I just published a LinkedIn newsletter today on listening. It's not framed listening to ourselves, but if you read the message, it's mind blowing how much it talks about: are we listening to ourselves or are we ignoring ourselves? And what's the cost? What's the cost when we don't listen to ourselves? If anyone here, our Andrew, you or our listener, would like to get to know themselves a little bit more, listen to yourself a little bit more, I have it's called Say It Straight to Yourself journal prompt membership. And that membership is you get a journal prompt every day, 5 days a week, weekends off. And what it does is it helps you listen to yourself more, because what you write down, you would be surprised, even though it's coming from your mind and your hand is writing it, it's hard to see it and hear it and know it until it comes out on the paper. There are so many ways that we ignore ourselves. And when you do these journal prompts every day, 3 minutes a day or less, this is what I say to members: don't spend more time than that, because if you spend more time than that, it will be too hard to make it a habit, and then it will fall or get put on the shelf. But this is an opportunity to hear yourself more and more and more. And it doesn't have to be this journal prompt membership. It could be you could make your own questions every day if you keep up with it. But the point is, listen to yourself first Listen. Who are you? What are you saying? What are the things that are important to you? What are your values? What is meaningful for you? And then you're going to be able to share that with other people, as well as listen to other people and what they want. And like Andrew, like you said earlier, Andrew, which I think was key, is that we listen. What did you say? I can't remember exactly what it was, but
Maybe active listening.
no, it wasn't that. It was I don't know. If I think of it, I'll let you know. Unfortunately, I won't be able to include it in the show, but it tied in so well with this. And the key really is to listen to yourself. We have to hear ourselves, and we have to give up maybe priming and prepping. I love that concept. Like, we really do have to prime and prep ourselves to be listeners. And what can we do to help other people prime and prep themselves to be listeners as well? Because it's not just like, hey, listen up. You know what I mean? Like, we might hear that sometimes. I think as a kid, I used to hear that a lot. Listen up, right? But it's like, what do we do to prime that listening up? What do we do to get to create that space where we can listen? And I think that's really an important topic and something that is worthy of further exploration. So thank you for bringing it up. We thank our listener. Thank you for listening to us. And if you ever want to talk, you want to be on the other end of it, let me know. Come on the podcast. I'm sure you have a very valuable communication topic to discuss. Thank you, Andrew, so much for being our guest. I hope to see you again, maybe in person in the studio down the road, and we will chat more about listening.
My pleasure, Gina. Thank you.